How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to The Mindful Hunter. I'm your host, as always, Jay Nichol. Today is a pretty special day because we are going to go through the first kind of downloadable tool or resource that I've put out. This was one of my goals when I originally built The Mindful Hunter, was to be able to have almost like a library or a catalog of tools for a variety of purposes. Now, I chose to build the meal planning one first because I basically saw it as the biggest need in the industry where there wasn't kind of sufficient resources. A lot of the other issues, pack fitting, layering systems, some good people have given a good attempt at putting out some resources that address those issues. And I found specifically with nutrition, and now maybe it's because it's a passion of mine, something I've studied for a long time, I was just really disappointed in the quality of information that was available. So I decided to put together basically like an all-in-one meal planning guide for backcountry hunting. Now I'm going to do my best to keep the video succinct, which I will likely fail at because I always try and keep it short and it never actually ends up that way. But the reason I'm going to try and keep it short is that the tool is here for you to download and keep and read at will and use as a continual reference guide moving into the future. So I'm not going to get into a lot of the complicated stuff on video because you're not going to remember it anyways, and it's better to just look it up in the guide. So link will be down below, but it's mindfulhunter.com/tools. You just have to give your email in exchange to download the guide. You do get put on a newsletter that I send out once a month. It's just basically a list of the content that I've put out in the previous month. And if you don't want to be on the newsletter, just unsubscribe. No hurt feelings. Doesn't bother me at all. So you'll download it as a PDF. I don't think a lot of people will print it out like this. I did today just because I wanted it at my fingertips for going through this video with everyone. Now, I've titled this video, The 7 Simple Rules to Backcountry Meal Planning. And the reason I did that is that I want to give you principles that you can use that are greater than instructions for any given situation, so that you feel empowered if circumstances change. If you go on a different hunt, you're not like, well, that information isn't good for me anymore. I want you to have a set of rules and principles that you can use regardless of the situation. Now, the second note I want to make is that I've called this 7 simple rules, but there's actually an 8th unspoken rule, and that is experience trumps everything. If you've been doing this long enough and a couple of these don't vibe with you, or if you run these rules and you come into a situation where one of them no longer applies, or you need to adapt them or change them slightly because of your own nutritional needs, that is not only allowed, it is 100% encouraged. And I'd like to hear back from people. If there's elements that work for you, fantastic. If there's elements that don't work for you, I'd like to hear about that too. I would assume, I'm going to be putting out some other guidebooks as well, that every couple of years, most of these guidebooks will need to be updated with further additions based on findings from the field, new science coming out, new products coming on the market, and even my own learnings and experience the more time I spend in the backcountry. All right, let's dive into it. Rule number 1, bring 3,000 to 4,000 calories. Now, I've based those figures on an average size man. There's information in the guidebook that will help you adjust those figures if you're bigger, smaller, female, etc. But as a general guideline, depending on the hunt and depending on some other factors, we want to fall between 3,000 and 4,000 calories. So what's going to affect that number? What's going to push us higher and what's just going to push us lower? And this is going to be somewhat counterintuitive. So we're going to move on to number 2. And this is where it gets interesting. The longer you hunt, the less food you bring. Now that sounds counterintuitive. And here's what's going on. Typically, on shorter hunts, we're more active and we also have the ability to carry more weight. I'm going to take an elk bivvy hunt, for example. You're only going in for 3 or 4 days and you're going to be hiking pretty much nonstop all day, every day. In that situation, not only do you need as many calories as you can take, you have the ability to carry more calories because you're not carrying 7, 8, 9, 10 days worth of gear, food, water, etc. Now on longer hunts, not only do we have the weight limitation where more days of food are harder to carry, we also have the increased likelihood of down days. Now when you go on a sheep hunt, you might hike extremely aggressively for a day or two, and then you might have a down day for a day or two where all you do is glass. Once you've cleared the basin and you feel comfortable moving on, you're going to hike like mad for another day or two. And then you might have another day or two that's down while you clear the basin and glass some more. So because you're not going super aggressive all the time, we can afford to have a few less calories in our bag. So it not only respects the weight limitation, but it also addresses the shifting caloric needs throughout the hunt. Just because there's 3,200 calories in each daily bag does not mean you have to eat it all. You can eat a little more on the more aggressive hiking days, or like myself, I'm actually not as hungry on those days because my metabolism is so ramped up. On the down days when I have more time on my hands and I need more things to kill time, I prefer more snacks. So I kind of catch up or front load depending on where I'm at in the hunt. I'll eat a little bit more on the down day and a little bit less on the aggressive hiking day. All right, let's get into a macro split. We're gonna go 40% fat, 40% carbs, 20% protein. Now I really get into the detail about how we metabolize fat versus carbs versus protein, what role each of those individual macros play. And if you're interested in that, download the guide and read more. But essentially, we're looking for a balanced diet that's going to put enough glycogen in our system that we're going to be able to react real time to the energy that's required of us, while also taking advantage of fat's ability to act as stored energy for later on. Rule number 4, time your carb intake. So this is pretty innovative to this particular guide. I've seen a lot of people talk about keto, and I could get into why I think that's a terrible nutritional strategy for backcountry hunting unless you are fully 100% fat adapted. But essentially, your body requires glycogen and carbohydrate for certain types of physical activity. And fats take longer to digest and before they are processed and then available as energy for the body. So what I like to say is, if you plan on expending a good deal of energy within the next hour, you want to focus on your carbohydrates. When you have more than, let's say, an hour and a half or 2 hours, that's when you want to focus on your fats. So evenings are a great time for fat consumption. When you've just got to a new glassing knob and you know you're going to be there for 3 or 4 hours before moving on, excellent time to eat a bunch of fats. Depending on if you have glassing right outside of your tent, also an excellent time when you wake up in the morning to have a lot of fats in your breakfast. I carry extra things like MCT oil, nut butters, macadamia nuts. All of these are excellent sources of fat. But just be strategic about your fat and your carbohydrate intake and time it appropriately depending on your proximity to needing to exert large degrees of energy. Up next, let's have a little discussion about ancillary supplements. So rule number 5, bring adequate electrolytes, omega-3, curcumin, probiotics, multivitamins, greens, and fiber supplements. Now, it's going to seem like a lot and it's going to seem over the top because nobody ever talks about this. Everybody just brings Mountain House and some water. And here's the thing, after day 3, your bowel movements get less than ideal. Your digestive system is less than ideal. And it's because you're not eating like you normally eat. So even though it's rule number 5, I think this is almost one of the single most important things to do. And the thing you can do, which will have the greatest impact on optimizing your performance capabilities while you're out in the backcountry. And let's face it, that's what this is all about. Anybody can walk in there with some top ramen and tuna in some Ziploc bags. You will survive. The question is not how do I survive? The question is how do I thrive? How do I perform at my peak in less than ideal circumstances? The way you do that is through the strategic manipulation of your nutritional programming. So electrolytes are key. Wild Wilderness Athlete has an excellent product called Hydrate and Recover. There's lots. You're just basically looking, and again, I'll get into the details in the guidebook, but for sure you need sodium, potassium, and magnesium in whatever it is you're going to take, and have sufficient amount of it either directly in your water or through tablets that you're getting sufficient electrolytes to meet your daily requirements. Now, omega-3, curcumin are both going to act as anti-inflammatories as well as just helping other general metabolic processes while you're out in the bush. Probiotics are going to make sure that you have healthy gut flora. This way, you process food in a healthy way, even when you're not eating things that you would typically eat. You can get probiotics in little packages. You can pick them up in pill format. There's lots of different ways to get these pretty conveniently into your diet in the backcountry. A multivitamin serves the same purpose. I almost look at this as like a little bit of insurance. Yes, if we're eating the right foods, we should be hitting all of the appropriate vitamins and minerals that we need, but we're not on a regular diet. So what does it hurt to throw an extra multivitamin, one per day, in a little Ziploc bag in our daily kit? It takes almost no time, costs almost nothing, and it's a little bit of insurance just to make sure that you're getting the basic needs in there. Now, the greens and fiber supplement are something I've only recently started experimenting with, and they have had a profoundly positive impact on how I operate and how I perform out in the woods. We get zero, dark, crunchy, leafy greens when we're out in the bush. We're not bringing fruit with us. We're not bringing fresh vegetables. We're just eating, dried Mountain House and Peak Refuel and protein bars. And yeah, they have protein, fats, and carbs, but they don't have all the additional vitamins and minerals that your leafy greens do. So I like bringing a green supplement. And in addition to that, I like adding fiber because we don't tend to get enough fiber when we're eating a backcountry diet. And those two specifically have played a profound role in my bowel movement health. And when you're pooping good, you're happy, and you're going to hunt longer, and you're going to be happier. So again, electrolytes, omega-3s, curcumin, probiotics, multivitamins, greens, and fiber supplements. It might seem like a lot, but you buy a big tub of every single one of those things and you'll have it for hunting for the next 3 or 4 years. It's really not that big a deal. Highly recommend it. Rule number 6, the food for each day goes in a 1-gallon Ziploc bag, and then all those bags go in an ultralight dry bag. And I'm going to take this one step further. As soon as you get over a 5 or 6 day hunt, I split those up into 2 dry bags. This is way more stackable in your backpack. And also, if you get to an area where you're going to be kind of doing a big loop, or you're, going to go in and then come back out, it's very easy to just take one of the food bags, hike it up in a tree, and come back for it later on. And then you can take that weight out of your pack. So it's much more easy to pack, and it allows you to be more strategic with how much weight that you're carrying. And the reason I like them in the dry bags is that way every night when you get to camp, if you're in a bear area where you have concerns, it's super easy to just put some polycord on it, huck it over a branch, lift it up into a tree. In the morning, let it down, eat, no problems. Quick, simple, easy to pack, easy to maintain, easy to move around. Now, rule number 7, the daily intake is structured around 3 main meals with snacks and drinks as activity requires. So I like to think of it like this. Your breakfast is a given. You're going to have it as soon as you get up. Some people tell me they're not good morning eaters. I say, I don't care. Take something that you will definitely eat, because it's important to get those nutrients into you and those calories into you as soon as you wake up. Because on most hunts, you're going to be getting active right away. So the first thing I do is I have my cup of coffee and I have my breakfast. Normally, dinner is going to be when you get back to camp at the end of the night. Everything else is kind of up for negotiation depending on how your day goes. Remember, you want to reference rule number 4 to time your carb intake before high energy activities and your fat/protein intake before low energy activities. So by the time you combine rule number 4 with kind of your available time, the rest of the day kind of takes care of itself, being anchored by breakfast and dinner. In an ideal situation, I would try to not go more than 2 to 3 hours without intaking some form of calories. So there you go. 7 simple rules to successfully preparing backcountry nutrition. Now, one more quick thing that I'm going to get into is we're going to go through the meal plan for the hunt that I just did in the summer. So this was a 12-day sheep hunt that turned into a 13-day sheep hunt. And I'm going to go through what I ate on a daily basis. So for breakfast, I had a Peak Refuel berry granola that I put an additional scoop of whey isolate protein in. And then I had 4 Starbucks Via that I would probably only have 2 to 3 of every day. Now for snacks, I had some trail mix, macadamia nuts, and some sausage. And depending on where I was throughout the day, I would mix those up. Now, lunch is a product put out by Green Belly Meals. It's basically like a gigantic 700-800 calorie granola bar that you split in half that has really good macros, really high quality ingredients, and you don't have to heat water to cook them. It's my go-to lunch and has been for years. Now, in addition, I took some MCT oil, which I would mix in with my dinners at night. For dinner, I also had a variety of Peak Refuel dinners. I have my greens, fibers, omega-3s, vitamins, and I took some Mio for electrolytes. And I also took some Wilderness Athlete Hydrate and Recover. So weight in grams per day is 752 grams per day, or 27 ounces, or 1.68 pounds per day. My calories per day were 3,462. Now, I was 240 pounds, give or take, on that hunt. So for a normal individual, it's 200 pounds. I would say that number should be closer to 3,000, but because I'm a lot bigger, I need more calories. Now, as far as macronutrient breakdown, I had 163 grams of fats, 324 grams of carbs, and 153 grams of protein. And remember, carbs and proteins are 4 calories per gram, and fat is 9 calories per gram. So when I'm telling you to do a 40-40-20 split, that's based on calories, not grams. So this particular split put me at 42% fat, 37% carbs, and 18% protein. Another thing you can play with a little bit, if you're going in deeper and longer and you're not going to be as active on some days, you can increase your fat content a little bit. I still don't want your carbs getting under 30%, but the fat will allow you to carry more calories per gram, so you can kind of increase your overall caloric count without exceeding your allowable weight limit. So that was essentially my sheep hunt. That meal plan is in here. I've also got a secondary meal plan in here for an archery elk bivvy hunt, which is on the opposite end of the spectrum. I go all the way up to 4,000 calories per day. I've got some example foods in here. There's some really great stuff in here. I highly recommend you download it. I just saw a need for it in the industry and I wanted to make it. I'd love your feedback, what you liked, what you didn't. I'm thinking maybe the next guide I write will be a clothing layering guide, how to understand technical fabrics, wools versus synthetics, what an appropriate layering system looks like. So I'd also be happy to hear your feedback on that, what kind of guidebooks you'd like to see in the future. So as always, thanks for tuning in and happy hunting.